Hey everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Solstice. Here's my little video present for you. Hopefully this helps jog your brain a little bit. Um, the world's full of beliefs, the most dangerous one being that astrology is a belief system. That's the belief system, and it's the most dangerous belief system going. So here, let me talk about astrology. Look at this. This is a chart. It's my chart. I'm going to talk about my life here in this and what I've been able to gain. Here's an astrology chart. This is AC, that's the ascendant. This is the point on the eastern horizon when I was born. I'm in the middle of this chart. This is a geocentric chart. Astrology's always been geocentric, just like reality. So, what we've got here is my ascendant, 24 degrees Cancer. This is the sign Cancer. These are the constellations. Cancer was the constellation rising in the east, also known as appearing in the east. And Cancer has a lot, or your rising sign has a lot to do with your appearance and your whole energetic constitution physically has a lot to do with, that's the time you were born is how that's determined. And like it or not, you look like your ascendant. That's how you appear. And that was on the horizon, Horus's zone. So, and you can, when you pay attention to astrology and forget that it's a belief system and actually get your head into it, study it for yourself, you start recognizing that people look like their ascendant. So I can guess what time of day you were born. If I know your chart, but I don't know what time you were born, and I spend enough time, not always, but if I spend enough time around you, I can start seeing little characteristics come out, little features, twinkle in the eye, the nose, the way you take a deep breath. There's little subtle things, and I can start, I guess, what time you were born. It's a weird thing. I had an old friend who, he set me up with his chart, and he said, I think I was born around 12:34 a.m. Like, he knew he was born on the day, but he said he was born at 12:34 in the morning. So it was right at the beginning of that day, and I was like, no, you were born before that. And then hi old friend. Hopefully you'll be watching this, maybe not, but I was with him, with his twin sister, having the story told about their birth that he hadn't heard before in such detail, and they were born right after midnight, it turns out. And you can tell, he was a Scorpio rising, not a Sagittarius rising. Everything about him says I'm a Scorpio rising. You can just see it. So I was able to say, no, you were born before 12:30 in the morning, within a half hour. Like, I know somewhere you were born at least within that half hour before that. Anyway, that's what you can start seeing. That's how it plays out. It's not a belief system, just like the weather is physical. It's not a belief system. Now let's get into this. I was born with 24 degrees at the 24 degree of Cancer rising. Now, some planets, and I have a video on the elemental nature of planets. You can go watch that and get into this more, but some planets are hot and dry. Those planets create inflammation. The three hot, dry planets are the Sun, Mars, and Uranus. Chiron's also a dry planet. Now look, on this day, the sun, outside there was one day in my life, now here, get into this, if you can read there, it says hemorrhoidal bleeding, lots of fun, but that's Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, colonitis, whatever you want to call it. It's bleeding from your intestines, your hemorrhoids are inflamed, and it creates bleeding, but it's inflammation. Inflammation is brought on, by diet and lifestyle, but it's the timing of people, it's a very common thing, this bleeding. Today's diet, people are eating constantly, and they don't give their intestines time to take a break and heal and repair. You're constantly digesting, so it's creating friction. So you're creating your own friction and your own abrasion and your own inflammation through diet and lifestyle. But the timing of when it gets to a point where you're bleeding and you're losing blood, seems to come and go without any rhyme or reason. Although if you've had it long enough, you realize that your diet does have something to do with it. To be honest with yourself, you need to recognize the diet definitely has something to do with it. But there are other factors, and you know that too. Because sometimes it just comes even when you've been eating well. And now look, on this day, so I've been dealing with this for 3 years. I don't deal with it anymore. I still have very light. I can see when it would be bad had I not sort of dealt with healing in a lot of ways. And the number one way to deal with at least this one is fasting. I really recommend giving your intestines a break just to heal. But what I'm going to talk about relates to anything that has to do with inflammation. My bleeding is a sort of a side effect of Lyme disease. So all the autoimmune diseases that are triggered, especially by inflammation, all of the symptoms that are triggered by inflammation, this is all pain. This has everything to do with the timing of those things. So on this day, the sun was at 23 degrees of Cancer. This hot and dry sun was right there on my ascendant, bringing heat and dryness to my physical constitution. My energetic constitution was hotter and drier on this day because the sun was on my ascendant. Uranus was also at 24 degrees, exactly square to my ascendant. Uranus is another hot and dry planet. Uranus takes 84 years to go around the chart. So Uranus has been sitting here kind of going back and forth, retrograding at 24, and it's still there. It's there today. It's made its last retrograde to somewhere about here at 24, and it's about to go direct and move on. But it's been creating this one constant steady source of heat and dryness for a couple years now. So every time that the sun, and then we'll get into Mars too, but Chiron's is a very slow mover too. It's been hanging around here at 24 degrees for a while too. It's not so hot, but it's definitely a dry planet. And now on this day, I don't know if I got to this point, but on this day, after dealing with bleeding for a while and whatnot, I would just bleed when I went to the bathroom in the morning. On this day, I just started leaking blood. It was at night. Usually I would just go in the morning, I'd go to the bathroom, and whatever blood I had would go out. Maybe I'd have to go to the bathroom a couple other times, and blood would come out, maybe mostly even. But this time I just started leaking. I didn't push anything out. It just started, I just started bleeding. So on this day again, the sun's at 23 right there. Hot and dry Uranus squaring. Chiron's at 24. These two have been there creating a long-term chronic dryness and heat situation. And then on this day, Mars, right there at 24 degrees Scorpio. Mars is the most intense trigger for inflammatory situations. You can really start paying attention to where Mars is, and when your inflammatory situations arise, start being able to time them. But when you also add the sun and other planets in there too, you can really start timing them. Now on this day, the moon also happened to be at this is at the hour that this happened. The moon was at 25, so it had been coming through right there conjunct Mars, and the moon brings swelling. And so they were inflamed and dry, and then all of a sudden they swell, and they just bled over. The hemorrhoids just bled over, to be blunt. But this is Mars is only at 24 degrees once every 60 days. The sun's only at 24 degrees once every 30 days. It's going to be 8 years before Uranus gets up to 24 degrees again. It's going to be probably similar for Chiron before Chiron gets up to 20. These don't happen every day. Just like I don't just start bleeding every day. This is why Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, said if you don't understand astrology, you have no right to consider yourself a physician. It's not a belief system. This has nothing to do with belief. And now all of the timing of the times when I would bleed a lot, all coincide, especially with Mars being at 24 degrees of different signs, and especially when they would line up with the Sun and Mars happening to both be around 24 degrees at the same time, because it doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes they're all lined up at 24 together, and this time there was all of the hot and dries were all at 24 together. Add the moon swelling, and boom. Now, how to deal with this is a whole other issue, but I recommend fasting as the first start. But anyway, this is Hippocrates also said it's more important to understand the type of person who has a disease than it is to understand the type of disease a person has. With my chart, I'm Cancer rising, ruled by the moon. My moon is in Scorpio, which rules the bowels. And you saw that Mars and the moon were in Scorpio at that time, so that energy was being inflamed in the bowels, and I lost a lot of blood over a few days there. With all of those things aligning, I lost a significant amount of blood, life force, energy, many detrimental effects to my health because of that. So learning about all of that was really enlightening, and I hope it can be for you too. Anybody wants to contact me, especially about your medical issues, and have questions about how you can figure this out, please get a hold of me. I'm just here to help. So I hope to hear from somebody. I hope everybody's really healthy and doesn't have any issues. But the power of understanding astrology goes infinitely further. Suicides. Every suicide has... They're not random. It's planetary pressures piled up, but they're all temporary, because every planetary tension is also going to be relieving soon. It's about knowing seasons, and people who make that decision to commit suicide feel like they're in a season that will never end. But astrology is just the science of the cycles. You'll get through that cycle. The pendulum does shift. There's my Christmas present to all. I hope anybody got something out of that. Take care, everybody. Peace.